Hey, all. This is Vanessa Love, and this is my channel about the mental health field and related topics. So, kind of related to the short, where I pretend I'm a therapist, finding out that their client, in fact, did not go on a machete rampage and threaten people, that it was on the news. What happens as a therapist if your client is on the news? Okay, so it depends on the setting that you're in. I'm in private practice. Given that I'm in a building that has security and an administrator, not my administrator, like an administrator for the office rentals that I rent from, right? So um like that what would happen, so in my setting, if the security and the the administrators know and definitely know that this is a thing that happened, they might be like a little bit wary. I think security might actually, I don't know if they might be able to check the name and confirm. But I am also in a excuse me, an office building that has a consulate. So they are very used to people with high profiles being in this building to begin with. So um, maybe a look here or there, but overall, my client will be fine. The conversation would probably be like, so I did see the news story. Is that something that you want to talk about? And then if they do, I can be like, okay, well, take me through the day. Like, what happened? You got up, right? And then you knew this parade was happening. Then what happened? And they can take me through, right? And we can kind of process like feelings and that type of stuff. If there's police involvement, if it's probably not even police involvement, it's court involvement. Police have nothing to do with me. If there's court involvement, I write very basic, clear. I do not put shit in any of my stuff. Like, it's not like, oh, 31-year-old person presenting as clean and well mannered comes to my. No. Person, date of birth, started therapy on this day, was diagnosed with this, has been attending, is working on this. That's all that you're ever going to get. When people DCF got mad at me, apparently, well, has been mad at me for the last year, because I'm like, I'm not going to give you a detailed report. I think you are fishing for something, and I am not doing that job. Every other time I have dealt with DCF, the client started on this day, date of, client with the name, date of birth, came on this day, has been seen by my office weekly, blah, 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 blah. Like, that's it. That's it. They do not have access to anything. And if they asked for more information, the other information is such basic, like came on 3/11, came on 3/19, worked towards anger management, discussion of family. Like, they are not getting shit more than that. You have to understand this, because people are always worried for some reason that something's going to happen, and that all of these details of every little thing that they ever said in therapy. And I'm like, I don't even write every detail in therapy, and I don't do soap notes because they're actually not required by law. No notes are required by law. However, according to ethics, you should have some documentation of your clients coming in. And what do I provide? Documentation of my clients coming in. And basically, I can copy and paste that onto the insurance information, and that's it. That's all that's ever required of me. So, legally required of me. Ethically required of me is a little bit different. And these notes apps where they're like, you have to do your notes. You can do your notes while you're in counseling. I almost joined another group practice, and they were like, you would have to spend time doing your notes. You would have to do soap notes. And I'm like, but that's not how I do notes. Like, I don't care. And I was like, okay, yeah, I don't think that this is it ended up just being, it was going to be more trouble than it was. And I think this is during the pandemic. And they were like, we don't even know if we're going to have like an office anymore. And I'm like, so you're just making money off of like independent therapists who are doing their job at home because you can find them clients. Okay. Okay. Some people are not in this field to entirely have a client load. It's not my thing, but like some people are not in this field to have clients. Again, not my thing. So if this was like a setting where there was like more people, like a community outreach or an outpatient program or a partial hospitalization program or an intensive outpatient program, IOP, PHP, then like, what would happen is that unfortunately people would find out. People would talk. And so even though I might act the same way, hey, did you want to talk about that? At that point, it's very understandable if that person did not want to talk about it. Totally get it. I'm not here to be like, I'm going to force you to talk about this other stuff. Like, instead of, how was the parade? Be like, well, what else happened this week? What do you want to focus on? What's important for you? Because again, if it's not going to be something that's like, we're not going to talk, then we're just not going to talk about it. But you have to understand that other people will talk about it. And especially like New London, there were a couple of cases where I'm like, like one of my colleagues, like I always try to keep my distance from the community because because I didn't want to be so involved with the community that having any clients from the community would be tough for me. Like I still wanted to have some connection, but I wanted to have like a distant connection. But some people, they've lived there for a long time. They've done a lot of things. So like, there was someone who, I'm trying to remember the thing correctly. So like there was a funeral for someone who was very well beloved. And, like my colleague goes to, and her other colleague friend, person in the field, end up going to this funeral and seeing several of like all like their client, both people saw several of their clients and are like, are you okay? And that's what my colleague was telling me. Like, so I went to this funeral. Lots of my clients went to this funeral. This person was well known in the community. I did not know this person. I'm like, it was in the news, and I'm like, when everything went down, I was like, oh no, I gotta deal with my clients dealing with this. And so like, and I did. And so like, yeah, so there was a funeral. There was a lot of like my colleagues, both colleagues, like clients there, and they were like texting and crying and, all this stuff and then checking in, which I think is good. Yeah, several of my clients also, like there was a friend of mine who like several people, like he was well connected to the community. He passed, and when he passed, it was sad. A lot of people talked about that. And it was luckily delicately talked about before my clients talked to me about it, by someone who knew like very, very close and personally what had happened to this person. And they were like, yeah, we haven't been able to talk about it for a couple of days, but this person passed away. And so it was like, oof, okay, well, I'm glad I heard it that way and not from a client. Oh God, there was like other things that happen. Like sometimes things happen to a community. And so like you kind of have to like deal with people who, especially in a small town, and New London never wants to admit that it's a small town, but I'm like 40,000 students, 40,000 people is exactly 40,000 students that I went to San Diego State. So, like it, So, yes, I would hear like different perspectives of the same story that had happened. And like, there were things that happened that I'm like, "Did that happened to several people, or did like someone tell me that that happened?" And just like, someone got drunk and lost a bumper one time. And like, I heard the same story from someone else. And I was like, did did you, did both of you do it? Did did I imagine that from someone else? Oh, didn't I? But I think both of them. And then so very fortunate, I guess, for me is that I try to keep like kind of like overall like international news and national news. Like I don't try to focus too much on like um very local news because like um some of the local news other than some of the missing people are like it's really just not that important to me anyway or my life or my clients. But god, oh yeah, oh my god, there was this guy who was missing for like 3 or 4 months and they found him. He was like alive in another state. It's just that like he didn't have a cell phone that was traceable and he only used cash, so like up and disappeared and up and disappeared for 3 months. And then he was found. They were like, "Oh yeah, no, we confirmed he's safe." And I'm like, "Do you want to tell anything about anything of that? Like, the FBI was involved there, bros. Like, what the hell happened?" Oh my god, that was weird. Um, and like his family had like some of the bodies of water around, like dredged. Oh my god, it was so bad. That was scary. But like other than that, I have no clue. And I remember like months after I had seen someone, like I saw on like probably an Instagram post or something that was like, yeah, so this person who definitely was on drugs, um, had been on drugs and arrested. And I'm like, oh, okay. Like, but again, it was like months later that I saw this post from like the police in that area. And so it was like, oh, okay, you know. Sometimes Stanford it does have like some significant um like has some significant things going on. Um but then like sometimes it's just like, oh, they have a parade every year. They have like the before Macy's Day Parade, very fun. Um, and like a couple of other things that like they do is like, it's like a big deal. You go over there. So yeah, like that's fine. Um, those are the type of things where I'm like, I usually do get involved just because like it can be important to me to, like kind of just at least have fun, go out there, see some friends, um, have a sense of community while still, again, being a little bit distant. Yeah. So, um, yeah, it all depends on what setting you're in and how that person feels after, and if everyone fucking knows and is talking about them, which, kind of sucks. Um, but hopefully, unless you are seeing like clients specifically who would be the type to have a violent history or any of that stuff, that like you wouldn't necessarily on a consistent basis have that. Like I work with more trauma and like depression, so like my clients aren't necessarily going to be either on a national scale or on like a local level, um, creating chaos, or like doing violent things. I've had a couple of people when I've worked either at the psych hospital or the inpatient program, and like that was like, oh, okay, yeah, I heard of that on the news. And like one of the people wanted to show me the news story, which was weird. Like, so you got in trouble for being on drugs and causing a car accident. Okay, like that was so important for you to share it with me. And one of my colleagues was like, I just find everything he does so boastful. And I'm like, I don't even know how to interpret that at this point. Like, I don't know. Like, yeah, why are you showing me this? What's so important? But I don't know, the person wasn't really engaged in program. So it's kind of like I want to be with the people who are changing actively and not the people who are like just there because they were sent there and that's all that they're going to be because they were there. It's like, okay, sure. But I guess if you want to talk about how are you feeling about that, you see it replayed, you know, like is this the moment that you wanted? Is this the moment? Oh my god, I can't imagine if like I was like, yeah. So is this the moment that like you want to be remembered for, like causing an accident while high? You know, that sounds terrible. Anyway, so yeah, like it all depends on everything, anything, you know, that like that's involved with the actual setting. Um, yeah. And then like, you know, you have the person who is in Connecticut who was underweight and malnourished and kept locked in a room. And I'm like, yeah, someone's gonna be that person's therapist eventually. Um, you know, like whew. So man, like I can't imagine like having a client who you know is going to have a lot of focus on them because of their story. Like after the fact, you know, like it's not even like, oh, you know, like some of my clients do worry that like eventually they're just going to snap and go on a rampage. But like if luckily it never happens, thank God. Um, and then like, uh, you know, like they're able to manage their shit. And then I guess they're able to manage their shit better because, you know, they're coming to therapy. But I can't imagine like being almost a nobody for a long time and then having something extraordinary happen to you, having that on like a worldwide or a national stage, and then having to be like, so I gotta go to a therapist. And then, you know, being that therapist and, you know, not being like each therapist is different. So like some therapist would research a client like that and be like, okay, like I always ask my client if they're okay with that because like I know one of my clients one time was like, my wiki page is like written weird. And I was like, can I look that up? And I did. And I was like, they were right. It was written very weirdly. It wasn't like this person is so accomplished. It was like this person's sort of kind of accomplished in some way, I guess. And it was like, a fuck weirdness shit is this? What? Um, and then yeah, like um so like looking at like some details sometimes is very important and then other times it's just really not. Like if one of my clients had something significant happen to them like 10 years ago and I don't live in the community, I don't know, like it would be really like I mean I'd probably look it up. I mean I haven't for some of my clients. Like one of my clients was like a character in a TV movie. Um, yeah. And so like she was like, no, there was a TV movie made and about this incident. And like, yeah. And I was like, oh shit. Oh my God. But I never looked that up. Like it's so long ago and she like was like, okay, so this is the whole story that like it's not the dramatized version. And I was like, okay, yeah, no, that actually sounds like a reasonable and realistic like look at that. Whereas like what she was saying was like, oh, the situation that like they dramatized made it seem like this. And I'm like, oh, that's fucked up, you know. But did I look that up? No, I didn't. I'm okay. I don't need to, you know. Um, Sometimes the real story behind, like with the real person, is more important than like looking that up. And her name is still associated with some shitty people. You know, she's like, am I just being like targeted? I'm like, I don't know, man. Like that does sound like something that would happen, you know. So yeah, sometimes I mean, everyone comes with a history, right? But it's more important sometimes to sit with the person and kind of understand and figure out more than it is to research someone and know. Oh, yeah. But I mean, I'd probably want to know if one of my clients went on like any rampage, be like, all right, so, so, do we talk about it now? Do we talk about it at some other time? Anyway, I hope that was helpful for you, and I will talk with you soon. All right, have a good one. All right, bye.